We're going to start the show here in right now, actually. Luke Griffith says, thank you for the real news, not the fake news. Thank you. Thank you for being a member of the channel, Luke, and being a super chat person. I appreciate that. So let's kick this show off, shall we? All right. And here we go. Someone just asked, are we in the Twilight Zone? Yeah, you might want to check your set. We are in the Twilight Zone. Welcome into Morning Invest, the only morning news show that's not bought and sold by the big news corporations. This is independent journalism, so thank you for your support of the channel. Here at Morning Invest, what you can do to become a channel member is just go to morninginvest.com/join is how you can become a channel member. Coming up on today's show, Trump cancels the stimulus talks, but then has a late night Twitter rant and goes on a steroid-fueled late night tweet rage, calling for $1,200 stimulus checks in an effort to save face. I think you saw the markets tank. Also on the show, billionaires are getting richer by the hour. We're going to show you the new numbers on just how much money the billionaire class has been making and how the rest of the country is just sitting on peanuts at this point. We'll also talk about a vice presidential debate, which is unfolding tonight. Senator Kamala Harris versus current incumbent Vice President Mike Pence. Kamala Harris, yes, she's a skilled prosecutor, but she got her clock cleaned during the primary season. She is not a good debater. So it's going to be an interesting night. Now, we had the debate, of course, last week. A lot of people said these things don't matter. They don't move the polls much at all. And historically, that's been true, except for last week's debate. It moved the polls significantly. And a lot of people left the president's camp, specifically senior citizens. We're going to show you some of the latest poll numbers that are troubling for the president among senior citizens. That and more coming up on today's show. But first, let's tell you about our friends over at Outlet. Now, yesterday, a bunch of people said, hey, we tried to sign up, but the link wasn't working. I checked the link, but it is working. All you need to do to get a 6% interest savings account that's not backed by the federal government, it's not backed by the U.S. dollar, it's backed by crypto. So you actually get a much higher interest rate, get you out of this corrupt banking system. So just go to morninginvest.com/outlet. It's a savings account alternative. You sign up, they'll actually deposit free money into your account. You can start with as little as you like or as much as you want. Obviously, the more money you put in, the higher interest rates you get. And yes, you can deposit and withdraw your money at any time. Plus, they've got insurance on your money. Check them out. Go check them out. I have an account. I love them. It's amazing to see that weekly interest being deposited in your account. So if you've got $100 or you want to, you're waiting on a stimulus check, maybe put that stimulus check in there next time and watch that interest grow. Instead of putting it in that crappy Wells Fargo account where you're getting 0.001% interest, which is not a hedge against inflation. So all of that and more. Grover's here, but I will check in with him in a moment. He's out running around somewhere chewing on something. So he'll be back in a second. So welcome into the only morning show that covers the business news for the real Americans, not Wall Street. And one of the big stories we've been following, of course, is this stimulus. Now, if you watched our breaking news last night, moments after President Trump announced that he was ending stimulus talks, we did a breaking news show last night and covered all of the angles on that. And I said, watch the spin start. Well, the spin went into like supersonic last night. The spin cycle hit supersonic last night after we did our breaking news, late night. President Trump went on a steroid-fueled tweet rage last night and managed to hit all of these points on his tweets all night last night. Was just tweeting about stimulus checks and I think he was tweeting about like the NBA and on and on and on. It just went crazy. So much so that Joe Biden at one point sent out a tweet, please just get off Twitter. Nancy Pelosi even released a statement last night saying, I think the president's lost it. He's in his bunker right now, fueled up on steroids and whatever other experimental drugs. Please get off Twitter. So he went on a rant last night and hit a whole bunch of different things out hard. He said he's willing to sign a standalone bill for new stimulus checks, $1,200 stimulus checks. President said this last night. If I'm sent a standalone bill for stimulus checks, $1,200, they will go out to our great people immediately. I'm ready to sign right now. Are you listening, Nancy? And he also @replied his White House chief of staff, Mark Meadows. And he @replied Senate Leader Mitch McConnell. And he @replied Republican in the Senate, Kevin McCarthy, or in the House, Kevin McCarthy, Speaker Pelosi, and Senator Schumer, making sure that they saw his Twitter rant last night. But you have to understand the context here and why this is fairly ridiculous. Because the president ended negotiations yesterday with Senate Republicans because Senate Republicans do not have the votes. This is an effort to try to save face. Now, I agree with the assessment of Nancy Pelosi on this. Could she have agreed to some smaller little piecemeal bill over the past few months? Sure. After Labor Day, when Republicans wanted to hand out just a small little piecemeal bill and have liability protection, no stimulus checks. Remember, when the Senate came out with their bill, there were no stimulus checks. They wanted liability protection, and they wanted that $300 extension for unemployment benefits. Could Nancy Pelosi have agreed to that? Sure. It does nothing to fix the problem at all. There's no stimulus checks. There's no additional money for small businesses. There's no bailout money for airline industry, which is furloughing tens of thousands of people. There's no help for state and local governments, frontline workers, and PPP. I think people are forgetting that we are in a pandemic. And one big piece of their legislation in the HEROES Act was frontline workers, additional contact testing and tracing. And we saw yet overnight again another 40,000 COVID cases. And cases are now surging across the country as we head into this fall season. President Trump had a tweet and a Facebook message removed by Twitter and Facebook for spreading misinformation about the flu, saying that the flu is even bigger than COVID or deadlier. That has been removed because it's patently false. We have not lost 210,000 people to the flu in over a decade. That's how long it's taken to lose that many people to the flu. Nevertheless, President Trump last night essentially killing this stimulus bill. Now, overnight, though, he realized, I think, that he made a mistake, or at least he's trying to save face because the backlash was immediate. And the Dow yesterday finished down massive. And so did the NASDAQ. And President Trump and, Laura Ingraham over at Fox loves to say how great this president is for the stock market and that it's booming under President Trump. When President Trump was returning to the White House, the stock market boomed. It went up a little bit. But then when the president said he's ending stimulus talks, the bottom fell out. So he says the House and the Senate should immediately approve $25 billion, he says, for airline payroll support. $135 billion for paycheck protection programs for small businesses, he also went on to say. Both of these will be fully paid for with unused funds from the CARES Act. They have this money. I will sign it now. Okay, Mitch McConnell. Why don't you do something about it? But see, the real truth here is everyone's saying, when are you going to point the finger at Nancy Pelosi? Well, I just did. She had the opportunity to pass some of these smaller little piddly bills over the past few months, sure. She came out with a $3.5 trillion HEROES Act. Yes, it was filled with bloated pork liberal policies and packages as a starting point. You know what? That's what negotiation's about. Maybe we don't need bailout money for cannabis. Okay. Negotiate. Get that whittled out of there. So she does. They drop $1 trillion off their price tag. Then they drop another $200 billion off their price, down to $2.4 trillion, then down to $2.2 trillion. It is grotesque. It is. It's sad that Nancy Pelosi decided she'd rather not have anything rather than to try to give President Trump any kind of a victory in this whatsoever. So Nancy Pelosi made a calculus. She made a political calculus that says, I'm not going to give President Trump any victory here at all. If he wants to pass little piddly things, we're not doing it. Go big or go home. That's her political calculus. And guess what? Politically, she was right. because the president just gave it to them on a silver platter. Negotiations were at loggerheads for both parties, and both parties were getting hit from their constituents. Republicans and Democrats were both getting hit from both sides. Democrats were calling up Nancy, please, I have to go back to my home district and I have to tell them we've got to put something on the table. That's why we saw this revised bill come through last week. Make no mistake about it, Republicans and Democrats were both in a pickle over this. And President Trump just screwed over Republicans big time. And he may have just cost them the Senate during the election. And I love this tweet. This was a random tweet from a random Twitter person. This may have been my favorite. Sometimes all it takes is Twitter to find the exact right way to phrase something. Here was this guy on Twitter. He says, "Trust, I'm an artist. Thank you for your support." That's his Twitter handle. He said, "Wait, so Trump not only rejects stimulus funds that would probably have helped his reelection chances, but also does so in a way to make sure that he personally will take the blame for it." Brilliant. That sums it up perfectly, doesn't it? So Trump not only rejects stimulus funds that would probably have helped his reelection chances, but also does so in a way to make sure that he personally will take the blame for it. All of the headlines were, "I'm done. Trump ends the call." And he did. He was on the phone with Republicans and he called it off. He wasn't on the phone with Nancy Pelosi. He was on the phone with Mitch McConnell and Senate leaders from the Republican side. And he called it off last night. And then he sees the market collapse. And then he winds himself back and says, you know what, maybe now we should pass $1,200 stimulus checks. Maybe that's what we should do. If I'm sent a standalone bill for stimulus checks, $1,200, then they will go out to our great people immediately. I'm ready to sign right now. Are you listening, Nancy? I'm sorry. Maybe I kind of went. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I needed to rethink this before I decided to call everything off. Oh, wait a minute. People really want stimulus? Are you telling? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm on steroids. I'm sorry. I'm on weird drug cocktail right now. I don't know. Get off Twitter. Apparently the White House is in chaos right now. Not only right now, they're walking through spraying everything down. This is the White House. Guys in hazmat suits are disinfecting everything. As new members of the White House staff have now gotten COVID. Multiple members, including Stephen Miller. They're just walking through, spraying it all down, like fumigating everything. I mean, if this isn't a metaphor right now, politics is all about perception. Just remember that. Politics is about perception. And that's why optics are so important. And so you have guys in hazmat suits going through the White House, spraying everything to disinfect it. Politics, perception, the optics matter. It's like fumigate. It's, what was supposed to be getting rid of the swamp, right? It's like the fumigation process right now in the White House. Grover, what do you think about that? He rips apart he's ripping apart something over there. I don't know what it is. I think it's his little Trump doll. No, it's a little teddy bear. What happened to bigger is better, by the way? I've got a lot more to say about this stimulus stuff because it's so easy to fall for the spin if you watch mainstream media. It's so easy to watch MSNBC and not have any of them call out Nancy Pelosi. Right? Nancy Pelosi, who had an opportunity over the past few months to, yes, give the president or the American people a little bit of a victory with some of these smaller pieces, right? The $1,200 stimulus checks or $300 instead of $600 for unemployment benefits. Little small half measures from Republicans. But after all, they control the Senate. You're not going to get anything. And now it looks like the American people will probably not get anything. So Nancy Pelosi, in her effort to not want to give Donald Trump political points, helps screw over the American people.
Of your quiver, you're not ruling anything out.
Good morning. Sunday morning.
Out to lunch. But in her defense, Democrats have now passed two bills in the House, one for 3.5 trillion, then a renegotiated lowered amount for 2.2 trillion, and the Senate Republicans sat on it. So what's the real story here? What's the real story? Well, it was a wrestling match, like Grover trying to destroy this bear. It was a grudge match. And in the end, you needed a referee, right? So who was the referee in all of this? It was Jerome Powell. And yesterday, of all freaking days, Jerome Powell comes out with a message. When asked about new round of stimulus, this was his starkest reminder yet that we needed a stimulus plan for the economy, or we are on the verge of disaster. Listen to Jerome Powell's comments yesterday. I'm going to dissect it because it's very important to hear what he says and how the president and Republicans in the Senate just ignored it. Listen.
The expansion is still far from complete. At this early stage, I would argue that the risks of policy intervention are still asymmetric. Too little support would lead to a weak recovery, creating unnecessary hardship for households and businesses. Over time, household insolvencies and business bankruptcies would rise, harming the productive capacity of the economy and holding back wage growth. By contrast, the risks of overdoing it seem, for now, to be smaller. Even if policy actions ultimately prove to be greater than needed, they will not go to waste. The recovery will be stronger and move faster if monetary policy and fiscal policy continue to work side by side to provide support to the economy until it is clearly out of the woods.
Okay, a couple things there. Doing nothing would be a mistake. Doing something large would be smart. And even if we go over the amount that we think we need, it's not going to get wasted. It will be used. So what he's telling Republicans, that was a message directly to Senate Leader Mitch McConnell and Ted Cruz and all of the other clowns in the Senate that didn't want to spend anything to help people. Didn't want to do anything for direct stimulus. Don't want to help the lower income Americans at all. Don't give a rat's ass about eviction moratoriums winding down, people losing their homes, and homelessness skyrocketing because their Wall Street buddies are doing just fine. What Jerome Powell was saying there was that there's no risk in going big. To go big is fine because that money will be used. And by the way, our borrowing capacity is the best it's ever been right now. Yes, we're sitting on large debt, but we shouldn't be concerned about it in the middle of a pandemic. His words. Fed Chief Jerome Powell's words, appointed by Donald Trump, Republican. No one's listening. No one's listening. But his warning about inaction should also be heeded. No one's listening. No one's paying attention. Where was President Trump, though, just a few short months ago on this issue? Bigger and better. We're going to have a stimulus bill that's going to be bigger than anything that Democrats have seen. You know, by the way, a few months ago, everyone thought that was big. That was great. You haven't seen nothing yet. Wait till you see my big stimulus. It's going to be bigger and better than anything the Democrats want, okay? Mark my words, Nancy. Do you remember that? He held a press conference to talk about it. Job recovery. He had that little dog and pony show out in the Rose Garden in the blazing sun in July to say how well these jobs numbers were. And when asked about the stimulus, well, he wasn't even asked about it. He grabbed the microphone at the end and wanted to talk about how his stimulus was going to be bigger and better. Watch.
I just want to add, we'll be going for a payroll tax cut. We think that'll be incredible in terms of what we're doing because, again, we're going to be bigger, stronger, better than we ever were. That's going to be a tremendous incentive for businesses and also a great incentive, and maybe, to me, most importantly, for the workers. So we're going to be asking for a payroll tax cut. We'll be asking for additional stimulus money because once we get this going, it'll be far bigger and far better than we've ever seen in this country. That includes as of 3 or 4 months ago when everyone thought it was great, and it was great.
Bigger and better. And then in an interview that same week was asked about it. And he said, yeah, you know, Democrats want one thing. I want mine to even be bigger and better than what the Democrats want. Where did that go? Went out the window. Went totally out the window. So here we are. And I want you to understand this now. This is what happened, okay? So you're going to hear a lot of spin today. If you watch any mainstream media, you're going to hear a lot of spin. You're going to hear, if you watch Fox or conservative media, read anything, you're going to see how Nancy Pelosi's to blame. She stonewalled this. If you listen to liberal media, flip on MSNBC, you're going to see how Nancy Pelosi was the savior and she tried. She gave it her all, but President Trump wanted to end it. And they're not going to cover the real story. The real story is Republicans in the Senate. The real story, according to Jake Sherman and others, and according to my own reporting, is exactly what Jake Sherman was. Jake Sherman was, by the way, the one that broke the story last night. And I should mention, Jordan Fabian points out that these provisions that President Trump's including and talking about right now are all in the current stimulus. Everything that he wanted. The $25 billion for the airline payroll support, $35 billion for paycheck protection, small business, all of it's in there. Like, this is all in there. They've gotten to a point of agreement, at least in part from the White House. So I actually want to praise Treasury Secretary Mnuchin on this. And I wanted to praise Nancy Pelosi on this. They got very close, working day after day on the phone to get this thing ironed out. So Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, in good faith, was working with Nancy Pelosi in good faith. They were still far apart on a dollar amount. But it was Senate Republicans that screwed this up. It was Mitch McConnell and his merry band of Senate caucus members who are tone deaf and didn't want anything. Here's Jake Sherman's reporting on it. He said, okay, this is the last time we'll do this. He's in all caps, getting tired of explaining what actually happened. Because people are like, what about Pelosi? What about Trump? The truth is, the substance of why the COVID relief talks fell apart, the two sides were roughly $1 trillion apart. The GOP on Capitol Hill didn't want a $2 trillion bill. They wanted an $800 billion bill to a $1.5 trillion bill. Then he goes on at the bottom there. Dynamics never changed. No matter how many times Stephen Mnuchin huddled with Pelosi, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell was never going to ignore the majority of his conference, which did not want a big bill. Number 3, no one can really speak for Trump other than Trump. That's it. To put a finer point on it. There's your stimulus bill, folks. That's it. President Trump was saddled with a Mitch McConnell that did not want anything over $1 trillion, let alone anything over $500 billion. In fact, he had members that said, you can try to get to $1 trillion. We're not going there. Ted Cruz and others had told them, we are not going to vote for it, no matter how high you go. So now you want to try to pass a $1,200 stimulus check package based on the CARES Act money that's still sitting there? Okay, good luck with that. See if they want to do that. See if they want to reposition that money. Will Nancy Pelosi go for it? I don't know. But that's where we are. And now we've got a Supreme Court battle that's heating up. And that's the focus right now for Mitch McConnell. All eyes on the Supreme Court. Mitch McConnell only cares about judges. That is his legacy. He wants to be able to stack the court. That's his main focus, is stacking the court. So we'll see. We'll see. Now, there's your update. Smash that like button. Don't forget to subscribe. How many are you subscribed right now? We have new members here. Let me see. If you're not a subscriber of our channel, please just hit the subscribe button. We do the show first thing in the morning, every morning at 9 a.m. Eastern time. I love seeing new members. If you subscribe, your name will pop right up here on the screen, and I'll get to give you a nice little shout out for any new subscribers that we get. So please do that. Our channel is growing, and I just want to thank all of you for supporting independent journalism, not being bought and sold by the mainstream media. Just remember, every time you're watching like CNN or MSNBC or any of those stations, you're being brainwashed with a set of talking points that comes right from billionaire owners of those companies. And you're being lied to about what's really going on. Sometimes they get it right. Most of the time they don't. You'll hear a rare voice on one of those shows sometimes that actually tells the truth. Most of the time they're totally in the tank. So please, 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 please support independent journalism. John Wheeler, thank you for being a member. I appreciate that, John. He just upgraded his membership to silver. I appreciate that, John. He's been here for a long time. And smash that like button, please. We've got a lot more to get to here on the show. We're going to get to that in just a moment. This dog has been attacking me throughout the show. Yes, you. This is what it's like to try to do a show with a dog attacking you. Yeah. Yeah. You ever try to anchor a morning show with a dog attacking you? This is what it's like. I can multitask. Oh, yeah, we got some good viewer feedback. By the way, this is the only morning show that has a live audience where we actually interact. So throw them up on the screen, Philip, while Grover attacks my leg. Let's see, what do we got here? Oh, I got to take that shot. Okay. Mind Yo Business says, been getting strung along for months on end with this fiasco by both parties. These politicians have put Americans on a cruel, emotional, and mental roller coaster. Yeah, that's absolutely right. While they wanted to spend their vacation time this summer, and the Americans with the least amount of money in their pockets, the ones that are struggling the most in this country, don't have anything. They don't have anything. They're being ripped apart. That's exactly what's going on. So thank you for that. Stephen Mitchell took the Republicans too long, and now it would be a bad political decision for Democrats to accept anything. Ow, Grover. JC 310 Toys and Collectibles says, oops, I clicked that off. Get the money out to the people ASAP. 6 months of waiting and waiting and waiting while many are losing everything. So you would support a $1,200 a month stimulus, even without getting the full unemployment benefits or anything else. Joni Bragg says, just like you always say, Clayton, we won't see a stimulus until Wall Street sees a dip. Well, we have a dip in the White House. Yeah, but that's absolutely true. We won't see a stimulus until Wall Street takes a dip. But look at these numbers last night. I mean, here are the latest numbers. These are the latest numbers from Wall Street last night as the Dow Jones plummeted after the stimulus talks. After the stimulus talks fell apart from President Trump. What else do we have? We have some other comments here, Phil. And see, TJ says, facts don't care about feelings. We need leadership in a time of crisis, and time after time, Trump has shown he's incapable. Well, all summer he had the opportunity to be a leader on this, and he wasn't. So people want to sit there and say, why don't you talk about Nancy Pelosi? Yeah, I did talk about Nancy Pelosi. And she's not in charge, by the way. She's not the president of the United States. All right. So keep your comments coming this morning. We've got more to get to here on the show. Thanks to all of our new channel members, by the way. I appreciate that. Thanks to all of our super chats. Let's see who became a new channel member. John Hamilton. Welcome, John. Daniel Sequeira became a channel member. Lisa Beltran became a channel member. Thank you for supporting independent journalism. And John Wheeler, of course, upgraded to silver membership. Thank you so much. You can become a member simply. It's like the cost of a cup of coffee once a month. So Lisa Beltran is a new member. Thank you so much. You can support us for as little as $1.99 or higher if we bring you any value at all every morning. So we don't have to be bought and sold by big corporations. Let's talk about billionaires. Guess what? They're doing great. Don't you feel great for billionaires this morning? I got some new data out about billionaires. And, you know, at a time when Americans are struggling to put food on the table, at a time when Americans are being evicted from their homes, can't pay their bills, can't pay their utility bills, can't buy medicine, are choosing between rent and medicine, food and medicine, and they watch their president of the United States fly on a Marine One helicopter paid for by taxpayers to get the finest medical attention that money can buy. And we see headlines like this with more and more billionaires making money than ever before. Total billionaire wealth surged to a record high of $10.2 trillion during the coronavirus crisis, research says. Billionaire wealth jumped by more than a quarter during the height of the coronavirus crisis, according to new research out this morning. They did this Riding the Storm study, published on Wednesday by a Swiss bank, by the way, UBS, and accounting firm PwC, found that global billionaire wealth climbed to $10.2 trillion between April and July of this year. That's up, by the way, because I was worried about them. That's up from $8 trillion at the start of April. And look at this. This is amazing. This number just stands out to me. Between April 7th and July 31st of this year, the report found that billionaires across every industry saw their wealth increase by double digits, with those in the industrial, technology, and healthcare sectors recording growth of between 36% and 44%. So I'm glad the industrial, and we're hearing like, wow, industrial is being crushed right now during this pandemic. Wow, you know why? Because when you lay off a lot of people, guess what happens? You start doing better, right? Technology, Apple, Google, Facebook, crushing it. Now, in their defense, they actually hired more people. Apple hired thousands of people during the crisis. Google let people work remotely and is hiring, opening new offices. So I know Democrats are looking to break up big tech, and they held that hearing yesterday, which we could go in a whole segment on that and my thoughts on that. But looking at those companies right now, they did super great during the crisis. And of course, healthcare. So during a pandemic, wow, these companies did really well. And also many of them got lots of bailout money. Yeah. So the government was able to step in and help these companies out. Many of these companies ended up getting PPP money, government assistance. And what about you? The people that don't run a billion-dollar company? Were you able to receive any money? Jeff Bezos remains the richest man in the world, head of Amazon, the head of the Washington Post. He, the founder of the CEO of Amazon, has an estimated total net worth now of $183 billion. He gained $68 billion this year alone. This year alone. Katie Bedrosky, give a shout out to Princess. I will. Princess, you got a shout out. Princess, what do you think about this garbage? While billionaires continue to grow, the report goes on. Between April 7th and July 31st, billionaires across just every major sector saw their money grow. It was a time, think about this time, when many countries had to put draconian measures in place to stop the spread of the coronavirus. Millions of people losing their jobs and struggling to cope on all of these different government schemes that they cooked up. Billionaires just wallowed in the cash. It's like Uncle Scrooge playing in a big pile of gold. The world's richest surpassed the 10 trillion mark for the first time. Rally in the stock market. Global billionaire wealth climbed 10.2 trillion between April and July of this year, up 8 trillion at the start of April. You want to talk about the, income inequality in this country? There are a few people talking about it. You don't hear it much being talked about by Democrats. Joe Biden's tax proposal goes after those making over $400,000 a year, would increase those people's taxes. He says no one making under $400,000 a year would see their taxes go up. Does he understand the middle class? Does Joe Biden understand what the middle class is? The middle class is right around $68,000. That's like the threshold for what makes a person in America a middle class person. $68,000, $75,000 a year. Below that is considered lower class poverty level when you get down even in the, below 20,000. Most of the country right now, there is no middle class. It's gone. So this idea that you're going to tax the rich, saving the middle class, where does he think the middle class actually is, by the way? Both parties are out of touch. When you have a White House that tells you yesterday, when President Trump's tweeting yesterday, that in his tweet rage last night when he called off stimulus negotiations and said, Nancy Pelosi, she wouldn't come down on her price from 2.4 trillion. We were at 1.6. She wouldn't negotiate in good faith. And by the way, the economy is stronger than ever. Jobs are coming back. We're set to have the best. He said the best is yet to come. Stealing a line from Kimberly Guilfoyle. The best is yet to come, from her RNC speech. Really? Larry Kudlow saying that we're in a V-shaped recovery. Because look at Wall Street. Wall Street's doing great. Yeah, check out Wall Street right now. They're doing great. And by the way, no one should cry at all. When I see these things happen like yesterday, when Wall Street did this after President Trump's stimulus announcement, I went to the kitchen and got a coffee. Because I don't give a rat's behind about Wall Street. Because it's only fueled by corporate elites. The only people that make money in Wall Street are Wall Street. They take advantage of you and all of the hidden fees that you have in your 401k. President Trump loves to get up there and talk about how the stock market equals the 401k. That when the stock market is up, that means it's good for you. Until it's not. And even then, he's out of touch. Because the only people that really make money in the stock market are those day traders that sit there with 30 computer monitors in their face and they're doing millisecond trades. And sure, you might make, a little bit of growth over the number of years if you keep it in some, mutual funds that don't do much. That's not investing. That's making Wall Street wealthy. Those guys are doing millisecond trades. So yesterday, when the stock market tanked, those guys made a lot of money. Don't feel bad for them at all. These guys, when the stock market went down like this yesterday, these guys, they bought. They're making money. Don't feel bad for them at all. But who I do feel bad for are the American people that are being shafted left and right because they don't have access to the same things that this government does, that the wealthiest in our country have access to: healthcare, a safety net to support them, worrying about being able to put food on their table during a pandemic, and billionaires are just doing great. I mean, when I saw this, I couldn't believe. I could believe it. How many of you sitting there scratching your head right now when you see something like this? Total billionaire wealth surges to a record high of 2.10 trillion. Here's a perfect opportunity, by the way, tonight during the vice presidential debate. Let's talk about the vice presidential debate tonight. Here's an amazing opportunity. Senator Kamala Harris, who, is being labeled as a leftist, as a socialist, a radical lefty. She's not, and neither is Joe Biden. They're all part of one big party, just like Republicans, right? That's why Wall Street doesn't much care. All they care about is uncertainty. So Joe Biden's likely to win this election. The latest polls show that Vice President Biden is up significantly, up 16 points right now. And some troubling news for President Trump at this hour on senior citizens. His numbers among seniors collapsing very quickly. The numbers show that President Trump, with a group that supported him very strongly during the last election, that is senior citizens, they have all now basically left and gone over, not all of them, but a large portion of them, particularly in Florida and other states, have left and are now going over to Joe Biden. Huge. That's huge news. In states like Arizona and Texas, Oklahoma, Florida, this could be a landslide victory for Joe Biden. And yet, will anything change? Do you feel like anything other than getting perhaps a steroid-fueled whack job out of the White House will change anything for you? So tonight, would be a perfect opportunity for Kamala Harris during the vice presidential debate to get up there and talk about a story like this. Story like this, which is billionaire wealth surging to $10.2 trillion during the coronavirus. Yes, get up there and say, it's interesting. Vice President Pence, you love to talk about how the economy is roaring back. And before the coronavirus hit, this economy was the best economy we'd seen in 50 years. And she could say, Mr. Vice President, there's a big part of the story you're not telling. Is that the wealthiest Americans did great, but millions of Americans are unemployed, and wages are way lower than where they should be. People struggling to put food on the table. Evictions unfolding at a rate we've never seen before. You want to get up there at press conferences and tell the American people how great everything is. Could she point out these numbers? She could say, Mr. Vice President, a new study out this morning shows that between April 7th and July 31st of this year, the report found billionaires across every industry saw their wealth increase by double digits. In the industrial, technology, healthcare sectors, record growth of between 36 and 44%. And Jeff Bezos added $68 billion to his net worth in the past few months, all under the pandemic. Will she say something like that tonight? Will she pay lip service to the type of lefty socialist attacks that they've been calling her out on over the past few months? She's a lefty. She's a socialist. She's a radical. None of that's true. And if you watched the debate the other night, and you watched the town hall the other night with Vice President Biden, he rather pick on Bernie Sanders and tell everyone how he crushed him during the primary. And meanwhile, Bernie Sanders is out campaigning for him. So Bernie Sanders is out campaigning for him while he's on stage basically telling everyone how I crushed Bernie. And you want Bernie to try to get those progressives to come and vote for you? Is this a smart strategy? The sad thing is, that I fear what's going to happen is there's going to be like a landslide victory for Biden. Biden's going to win in a landslide. And the numbers are starting to bear that out in these latest polls. And nothing will change because the Democratic establishment will feel emboldened. Look, we cleaned out the Republicans. We didn't have to really talk about the progressive agenda at all. It was just run against the crazy man. That's what I fear. I fear that real policies are going to be swept under the carpet. Healthcare for all, Medicare for all, parts of a Green New Deal that could actually incentivize us to build clean, green, and renewable energies in this country instead of our reliance on fossil fuels. Stop this fracking, which is destroying people's farms and homes and communities. Just look at upstate Pennsylvania. You don't need to go much further than that, my home state, to see former Trump supporters who have come out, first of all, they should be blaming Obama, and they should be blaming Trump. But former Trump supporters that say, I don't know who to trust anymore. My yard, I can't even drink the drinking water. This is coffee, by the way, but like water coming out looking like this out of their tap because it's filled with methane and other chemicals in it that they can't even drink. And then they get hush money from these fracking companies to not talk about it. Here's $100,000. We'll put a little methane thing in your backyard and it'll spin the gas out here. You won't be able to drink your drinking water, but here's $100,000. You're not allowed to talk about it. Gag order. So yeah, we might get the crazy guy out of the White House, right? But at what cost? More of the same? I saw someone here yesterday. I don't know which one of you said it, but I love my audience because you guys are smart and you get it. You're not bought and sold by the mainstream media. You understand. And maybe for some of you who this is new thinking to, maybe it's starting to settle in a little bit. But there's a groundswell movement among progressives in this country, and even among young Republicans. 67% of young Republicans want climate change to be the number one issue that they're worried about. 67% of Republican youngsters. I'm talking 20-year-olds. Because it's their future. It's not Mitch McConnell's future. Nevertheless, I saw one of you mention to me yesterday, you sent a message to me. I don't know if it was live or if it was after the show. Yeah, Emmy Black, you're right. There's been fracking has been going on for years. Like I said, people should blame Obama. Obama's the one that brought us deep oil water drilling. The Deepwater Horizon catastrophe happened on Obama's watch. You know why? Because, you had Sarah Palin saying, drill, baby, drill. And Sarah Palin was out there saying, come on, we've vetted these projects. We've looked at them every way till Tuesday. They're safe. They're safe. And Democrats were being bought and sold by big oil, just like Republicans. These big donors that were going to support these Democratic candidates, BP and others, funneling millions of dollars to their campaigns. Let's support deep water drilling, whether or not we know it's safe. And then we saw what happened with the BP oil disaster. Alaska still has not recovered from the Exxon Valdez. So this happened under Obama's watch. You can blame Obama. Look, my point is, it's all one party. So my fear is that Biden wins in a landslide, which the numbers are starting to show that's the case. And then we don't see any meaningful change because Democrats will feel like we don't need to implement any of these really progressive ideas. Clean energy, really doing something on the environment. Not just paying lip service to it when you need to. Really doing something on public college for everyone. Really doing something on healthcare. Instead of co-opting a Republican crappy Obama plan or Mitt Romney plan and calling it Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. Really doing something. So that's my fear. And then what's going to happen in 4 years? By the way, if President Trump loses, I'm going to throw this out there. If President Trump loses, he could run again. I know you don't want to hear that if you hate Trump. They're term limited to 2 terms. If he loses he could run again in 4 years. He wouldn't be the first president to do that, by the way. Takes a term off, and then he's tweeting the whole time. Oh, you thought things were going to change. Oh, Democrats were going to do this, huh? Really, really? Well, more of the same. Drain the swamp. People are like, you know what? Maybe he's right. And then he runs again. That's a real possibility. Phil D in the chat says he'll be in jail by then, so it won't matter. That is true. That is possible. That is, of course, the biggest thing that he fears is being a citizen again. And then, then of course there's the tax fraud issue, which is sort of like hanging out there right now, like a harbinger of things to come. Like, come on, Mr. President. When is January 20th when you fly away from the White House? We've got all these tax questions for you. No, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to stay right here. I'm not leaving. Didn't Grover Cleveland do it? I forget. There was a few in the late 1800s that kind of, I think it was like, did Taft do it? I think Grover Cleveland. I don't know if Grover Cleveland did it. I thought he might have had 2 consecutive terms. I forget. But there are a few. There was like a few where they took a space, like in the late 1880s, not 1890s, before, William McKinley, Teddy Roosevelt era. I should know my history better than this. I'm letting you down. Jesus named above, what else? What's your name? It sounds like a cry and wine show. Thank you for that. Well, because this show is about investing in you and your future and investing in the right things. I mean, the things that we talk about here on the show, investing in real estate, investing in gold and silver, investing in crypto, investing out of this crazy stock market, investing in you and your economy and the things that matter to our future generations. That's what this show is about. So Morning Invest is not just about, oh, should I buy a Wells Fargo stock? No, you want to watch you want to watch a Wall Street investing show, go watch CNBC. Or they'll just have you, they'll talk down to you and tell you where just the elites make money. Morning Joe is never going to talk about this stuff. Are you kidding me? You think they're going to talk about things that actually matter for American people? They're bought. MSNBC is created by billionaires. I mean, you understand what these companies are, right? They're all one and the same. They're all Wall Street. Do you think that they want anything that Bernie Sanders was talking about? No. But guess where the country is going? Just look around and see what's happening, folks. Because it's coming. And the wealth gap in this country is unsustainable. The amount of debt that we're piling up just to support the wealthy in this country. Do you think, by the way, the trillions of dollars that we are in debt in this country, the trillions of dollars that's pumping through this economy, do you feel any of that money? No, that money is going to support the wealthiest among us. It's big. It's propping up Wall Street, buying up corporate junk bonds, buying up mortgage-backed securities, so that Wall Street is happy. They're not going to talk about this on CNBC. Because all of those companies are bought and sold by those same big companies. Do you think Comcast is going to let come on. You think Comcast is going to let them go off on this stuff? No way. It's not going to happen. Morning, Joe. Give me a break. Vicky Hess says the United States will not be great again because of the wealthy. It's unsustainable. All the signs are there. I mean, you want to read Road to Ruin, Jim Rickard's amazing book. Read Collapse by Jared Diamond. It's all there. It's all in black and white. We are doomed to repeat history. When you have a very small ruling class, which is what the United States has now, with the most amount of wealth, and the bottom 50% of this country has nothing. Do you think that's sustainable before there's a rise up? It can't go on. I mean, we have history to tell us. Yeah, Crazy Otto says trickle down in a global economy just means trickle out. There's no more middle class. And by the way, we know that trickle down economics does not work. It does not trickle down. So when President Trump wants to talk about how great the stock market is, remember what I told you last week, and I'll tell you again, is that the stock market rewards unemployment. The stock market loves it when a company spends or fires people, lays people off, saves money. That's a good time to invest in that company. Wall Street rewards that. Remember that. So we got more comments coming in, Phil. I want to play those a little bit if we can. I want to make sure you smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if we bring you any value at all. And don't forget to subscribe to our morning newsletter. It's delivered to your inbox first thing in the morning. It's totally free, and it looks like this. Fun little newsletter. We cover all the big stories. We write it every morning for you. It's totally free. Go to morninginvest.com, sign up, check your inbox. Covering the vice presidential debate tonight. How many of you will be watching the vice presidential debate tonight? We'll have full coverage tomorrow on the show. A lot going on, obviously, in the world, and we will be covering it for you. Here was an interesting tweet. I didn't get to this, but I thought this was interesting, sort of the behind the scenes of what's going on at the White House right now. Several Trump advisors are telling Axios' Jonathan Swain. By the way, Jonathan Swain did that amazing interview a few weeks ago with President Trump. Jonathan Swain says several Trump advisors right now are just utterly perplexed by the stimulus decision. He said they need this like they need a punch in the face. A campaign advisor said of the president's decision to own pulling out of the talks, you have to try to be this politically inept. What is going on in the White House? Where is Mark Meadows? One GOP lawmaker told Axios that this is, quote, a gift for Pelosi. But I love that second paragraph there. Trump campaign advisor said of the president's decision to own pulling out of the talks, quote, you have to try to be this politically inept. What is going on in the White House? Where is Mark Meadows? Well, I believe Mark Meadows is on his way out, by the way, because clearly what's been going on has not been favorable to the president over the past few days. Let's put up some questions there, Philip, if we can. But I don't know what politically would be going on in your mind to think that I'm going to announce to the world 27 days before the election that I am pulling the plug on stimulus talks. I mean, really? Okay, smart move. All right, we got some more questions here. Let me see here. Clayton, what is it going to take for Trump to get this act together? Tammy Gibbs asks. Like the hat, by the way. And for the two parties to get their act together so we can get a stimulus package. What, in your opinion, will make this happen? That's a great question. What, in my opinion, would it take? What, in my opinion, would it take? I think, well, number one, I think it would take presidential leadership. I think it would take presidential leadership telling Mitch McConnell, if President Trump really wanted to win this election, he would take the next 27 days and he would be out there at the podium every day if he could, if he's not suffering from coronavirus, basically saying, look, I trusted my Republicans in the Senate. I trusted Mitch McConnell to get this done. They're holding this up. You have to remember, I think one of the things that won the election for him, I was texting with my old co-host the other day about this. And to answer your question, Tammy, you know, one of the things that won the presidency for President Trump is that, or then candidate Trump, is that he fought against the establishment. He was willing to get up there during a debate and make fun of Jeb Bush and say, your brother got us into these endless wars. Do you support the Iraq war? Don't you? And then Jeb Bush floundered on it and said he supported it. And then later came out and flubbed it and said he didn't support it. And he lost. And President Trump said, your brother got us into two of the most worthless wars in American history, cost trillions of dollars, and I'm going to end it. And guess what? Millions of Americans across the country supported that position, like me. Get out of these endless wars. He was willing to stand up to his Republican establishment. But then what does he do? He gets in office. He falls right in line with the swamp. Increases the defense budget by 20% right when he gets in, right? This is what happens to these guys. So I think President Trump, if he wanted to show some leadership here, I think President Trump, if he wanted to show some leadership, would actually call Mitch McConnell, or maybe not, and just say, you know what? The Republicans in the Senate are the real enemies here. Imagine what that would do. So I think that's one way. Another way is if Nancy Pelosi just rolls over and they pass some small little piddly part of a stimulus bill, but I don't see that happening. And the only other way this happens, honestly, is I think after election, we get a stimulus. And there's actually a fourth way. I'm going to talk about this. Is if the Federal Reserve steps in and if Jerome Powell steps in and wants to put use of this digital currency, which is unfolding from the Federal Reserve, a U.S. digital currency for all Americans. If the Federal Reserve steps in and says, we're going to create digital bank accounts for all Americans. Remember, the central bank answers basically to no one. They're omnipotent in many ways, which is also their scariest. That's the scariest part of the Federal Reserve. But the Federal Reserve could step in and issue bank accounts to all Americans. So that's another way this could happen. I mean, just listen to what Federal Reserve Chief Jerome Powell said yesterday about a stimulus and the dire consequences if we don't pass one. And it doesn't matter how big it is. He made that point and underlined that point. A clear message to Republicans. Listen.
The expansion is still far from complete. At this early stage, I would argue that the risks of policy intervention are still asymmetric. Too little support would lead to a weak recovery, creating unnecessary hardship for households and businesses. Over time, household insolvencies and business bankruptcies would rise, harming the productive capacity of the economy and holding back wage growth. By contrast, the risks of overdoing it seem, for now, to be smaller. Even if policy actions ultimately prove to be greater than needed, they will not go to waste. The recovery will be stronger and move faster if monetary policy and fiscal policy continue to work side by side to provide support to the economy until it is clearly out of the woods.
Until it's clearly out of the woods. So, hey, by the way, don't mind how much you're going to spend on this thing, because we'll use it. And the use of that money far outweighs us not using it. So, great question, Tammy. A lot of different angles to it. I don't know that there's one size fits all, but thank you for that question. Any other good questions today? Cool. Uh-oh, stock market equals rich people feeling graph. That's what, yeah, that's right. Bride's biscuit. I feel like it's all been orchestrated, Brenda James says, to distract us and drag things out. It's no secret they know we, the average people, needed that stimulus. Makes me wonder why they're playing these games. I know it leads to all sorts of conspiracy theories and wondering what in the world is going on here. I hear you. I hear you. Green K2, can you imagine what George Washington would say if he could see what has become of our government? I bet he would be most angry at us for allowing this to happen. Well, most of the founding fathers, perhaps. That's for sure. I often think about Thomas Jefferson and what he would do. You know, Thomas Jefferson, one of his, of course, big things is, American people should never fear its government. The American government should fear its people. And at the point at which the American people fear its government, it's time to throw off the shackles of that government and start a new government. But now we have, armed forces, armed government agents coming into cities with no names and no badges, throwing people in trucks in the middle of the night. While these defense contractors make trillions of dollars. Oh, Boeing announced it's going to have to cut some stuff. I wonder if they'll get a bailout again. Wouldn't doubt it. DJ Earl is a member for 2 months. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. I appreciate it. We'll be keeping our eye on what happens today. If there's any news on the stimulus front, I'll bring that to you. If somehow Mitch McConnell decides he wants to do something about this, wants to get some movement on this, we'll keep our eye on it. Meanwhile, we will have the vice presidential debate tonight. We will be watching that. If any news comes out of that, we will bring that to you tomorrow morning. We'll have a full wrap up. Remember, normally these types of debates don't really move the needle much at all. But of course, last week they did. And we saw a huge bump for Vice President Biden after that last debate. Senior citizens flocking now to Joe Biden and up 16 points in just about every major category. But a lot could happen in the next 27 days. My God, a lot could happen. More members of the president's staff this morning contracting coronavirus and making announcements, like Stephen Miller, now positive for coronavirus. On and on and on. There's more staff, members of the Joint Chiefs of Staff also. And the woman that holds the nuclear football, yes, she's the one that walks around with the briefcase and carries the nuclear codes, announced she's tested positive for coronavirus. At the top levels of our government, the person who has the power to put the suitcase in the front of President Trump to launch nuclear missiles has coronavirus. John Hamilton says, please interview Charles Hoskinson. He built a new financial system called Cardano. I'll look into that, John. Thank you for that. Thank you to everyone who became a channel member today. We have 15 new channel members today. Thank you, John Hamilton. Thank you for your super chat, by the way. Thank you to Rebecca Reagan. Thank you, DJ Earl J. We've got a lot of great people here who are channel members. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for supporting independent journalism and being a part of our show. Annie says, I love Cardano. Kanye, BB Truth says Kanye 2020. Thank you guys. Thank you everyone. Oh, Grover's finally decided to settle down and not bite me. Someone just said in the chat. Someone just said in the chat that they're looking to get a mini pincher. Do you want this guy? No. He's the best. But yes, he's almost 8 months old now. 8-month-old mini pincher. And he's a good guy. I want to tell you before we go, don't forget about our show sponsor and how you can get 6% on every dollar you save. 6% interest. This is nothing like you can get with your local savings account at a local bank. And you don't have to open it with much money at all. I mean, you don't have to go crazy. I have a number of thousands of dollars in my account because I love seeing that interest payment come every week. You can open it anytime, deposit money anytime, withdraw money anytime. They've got insurance on your money. It's backed by cryptocurrency. That's why they're able to get you such a high interest rate. So here's how you sign up. Just go to morninginvest.com/outlet. You have to go to that link and they'll deposit free money into your account when you use that link. If you don't use that link, they won't deposit the money. And by the way, we're going to have one of the founders of Outlet on the show soon to talk about crypto, to talk about how this works and why they're able to get such high interest rates. So please, that day, please bring your questions. I know many of you are like, I'm in New York and they don't allow, we can't get it in New York and there's some other states. They're working on that. So there's a few states like New York and I think Texas and might be one or two others where they're not yet available, but they're coming. They're working on it. So again, morninginvest.com/outlet is how you can sign up and check those guys out. Thank you guys. Much love to all of you. We'll be back here again first thing tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern time. Subscribe to the channel. So we will see you in the morning and you'll turn on that little bell notification so that bell will notify you before or when we are live or about to go live. So you won't miss the show. Love all of you guys. Thanks so much for your support and have a great afternoon. Bye, everyone.